In November of 2000, in fact, I got in trouble because in London, working for BBC TV, I get a couple discs at my desk, and they are the names of the felons, the criminals, and ne'er-do-wells that were removed from the Florida voter rolls for the election of 2000. So I cracked those discs, went through them, and found names like Mrs. Bobby Moore, who was removed because Robert Moore of Ohio had committed a crime. And he committed the crime in 2014. So Catherine Harris could reach into the future and find the bad guys. There are 56,000 names. You might not be, you'd be shocked to find out, I bet, that most of them had BLA next to their names, black. Almost all were D for, I don't know what party that is, and everyone. I asked the Attorney General of Florida, so how many of these ne'er-do-wells, you go to jail if you're a felon illegally voting. How many did you arrest? How many of these felons have you grabbed? After all, you got their names and addresses. He says, well, yeah, I looked at the list and we found 6.
Wow.
But actually, probably not, just by none. And there were no convictions. 56,000 people, mostly African Americans, lost their vote. George Bush won the presidency in Florida by 537 votes. It was a racial coup d'etat. Okay? And then, okay, they're all right, give them one. 2004, I get a bunch of emails from Karl Rove's office. He sent me his confidential email. Oh, like he didn't mean to. He sent it to georgewbush.org, which is he meant to send it to georgewbush.com. He went to .org, owed by my friend John Wooden. It was a mistake, you know. And it said return it to him. You know, don't confidential return them. And so I did. I looked at them first. Okay. Thousands of names, and they called them caging lists. Here's another caging list. And I looked at the caging list, and I went to the Republican Party and said, what's all these names here? What's this caging list? They said, oh, it's our donors. And I said, but this entire list is from the homeless shelter in State Street, Jackson. We do let them lick the plates at the $500 plate dinner. Okay. And there was another list. Here's what they were doing. They were sending letters. Caging is this. Bobby Kennedy and I were investigating this for Rolling Stone. They're sending letters to 700,000 voters and when those letters came back, undelivered, they would challenge their vote, say these are fake voters from fake addresses. They sent them to homeless shelters. They sent them to apartment buildings in Miami of Jewish voters who they knew would not be around when they sent the letters in August because the snowbirds are going north. They were going after the elderly of Zion. And they were going after black students at black colleges sending letters, and another group. Because the race of a voter in Florida is written right on the registration form. They went after the dark-skinned voters who, at the U.S. Naval Base at Jacksonville, the U.S. Marines serving overseas, who they knew when the letter came, because it says do not forward, would go back to them. They challenged the rights of minority Marines to vote in 2004. Okay? And go to Iraq, lose your vote, or maybe your life, and mission accomplished. 2004. That's not all. Think you're done with purchase? Saw that number 181,000? That's not a fantasy number. That's the exact number of people that Rick Scott last week began purging from the voter rolls of Florida. 181,000 illegal aliens. People like Jose Hernandez. There was once a guy named Jose Hernandez, believe it or not, who was deported. So every Jose Hernandez in Florida loses their vote. And I said, well, wait a minute. I called the Attorney General. My God, these are criminals. You get caught voting, and you're not an American citizen. You automatically go to jail. There's never been a case where someone hasn't gone to jail, they got caught. You go to jail, and then you get automatically deported. I said, how many of those 181,000 have you got? He said, well, I said, come on, you got their addresses, you got their names. They show up to vote. Why are, how many of you busted? How, the jails must be filled. He said, well, one. Actually found 2, but one was an active duty Marine serving in Afghanistan who hadn't yet received the citizenship papers, and his commander had registered him wrongly. Wow. The other was an Austrian Republican. I won't say who. That's true, Austrian Republican. That's it. But 181,000 people, almost all of them Hispanic Americans, will lose their vote. Then, hanging chads, you thought that was all over with in Florida? Ohio. Talk to Bob Fitrakis, okay? In Ohio, 2004, more hanging chads than were in Florida because of punch cards. I know you're worried about computer voting in Florida. It was the hanging chads, baby, that was a tremendous amount of vote, unbelievable vote loss. You want to know? That's called spoiled votes, by the way, hanging chads. It's part of the game, overvotes, undervotes. Now, wait a minute. I said, spoiled votes, there are 1,451,116 spoiled votes in the last election. I said, how do you spoil a vote? Leave them out of the fridge? No, it's like, they hang your chads, etc. But the question is, whose vote is spoiled? Whose chad gets hung? I know we all saw, I just like every bad reporter who went to Palm Beach and saw, we had our pina coladas and we were filming, the chicks in bikinis, and that was, the butterfly ballot. Okay, but you know what? You go to Gadget County where 1 in 6 votes is thrown in the garbage can, blackest of 67 counties in Florida. Your chance of losing your vote through spoilage, okay, is 900% higher if you're black than you're white. That's the United States Civil Rights Commission analysis. 900% higher if you're black than you're white. And 2012, I go to Ohio for Democracy Now! And I went souls to the polls. I'm following a Baptist church to vote. There used to be dozens, Bob could tell you, dozens of voting places for early voting. Black people vote early because you remember what happened in 2004, right? And they waited for 8 hours in the race. And no, so they all go early to the polls. So what they did was they solved that problem. You have dozens of early voting stations. Now, 1 per county, 1 for Cleveland, 1 for Dayton. I was in the Dayton line. 80,000 people voted on a single day in 1 place because they were ordered to. But when I say voted, I don't know if they voted. Because you know what happened? I waited in line 5 hours with the people from the church. Okay? With the church group. They waited. No one get out of line. No one. I didn't see a single person. Okay? And then they got to a room, and they didn't go into a polling place. Because they ordered the removal, the closure of the polling booths. Instead, you went into a room, and they gave you a request for an absentee ballot. Oh. Now, these people were at the voting clerk's office, county clerk. They weren't absent from anything. What was absent was democracy. They got an absentee ballot. So, a request for an absentee ballot, and then an absentee ballot. And I go, what the hell is going on? So it's in the middle. I call up Bob, and these are the worst things. He said, this can't be. I said, Bob, just sit there. I got there. I got to Columbus at 1 in the morning. Got out of bed. Well, actually, he wasn't even in bed. He was working away. So it was 1 in the morning. I said, Bob, look at this. Look at this. Well, I don't have one with me. Absentee ballot request. And then they were given, from the request, if they were accepted, they got the absentee ballot. They fill out why. The answer is, let me give you this number, 488,136 absentee ballots were disqualified in the election. 500,000 ballots. You know what? Don't go postal. You say, oh, God, I don't want to vote on a computer, so I'll mail in my ballot. So the guys are going to steal your vote. Instead, you just hand them your ballot and expect them to count it. Oh, if they'll be... Now, how many votes actually get counted? Do you know what... Okay, other than the state of Oregon, do you know if your vote's been counted when you mail it in? Do you have any idea? The state of Oregon, you should know. The state of Oregon, that you can find out. And and why doesn't your vote get counted if it's absentee? Well, you saw my mom. She wrote in a candidate's name. Jill, you'll love this, Madam President. She wrote in the candidate's name, Donna Fry won as mayor of San Diego, won the race. And then the Republican official said, wait a minute, we're going back to this. She won as a write-in candidate, can you imagine, for mayor of San Diego by several thousand votes. And then they went back and they said, wait a minute, we're going to look at each of those write-in votes. And if they didn't add the E at the end of her name, out. Oh. She agreed that the ones that said surfer chick, she's famous, could go out. Blonde could go out. There were a lot. But the people like my parents didn't, and my lawyer sister, didn't fill in the bubble Next, you had to not only fill in the candidate's name, you had to fill in a bubble next to it. And if you put an X, you lost your vote. This is what's happened, and so they took away the race from her. Now, the question is, okay, when that number 5.9 million votes, that's if our prayers come true. That was in the analysis. I used to be a statistician. That's the analysis of the number of votes that were illegally lost in 2008 election. It was worse in 12. Some of the worst elections we've had. And but what's coming up, you just heard 5 states already with the ID laws, etc. Now, absentee ballots, spoiled ballots. There are 9 caging, purging. There are 9 ways to steal a vote. So this book is called Billionaires and Ballot Banners, How to Steal an Election in 9 Easy Steps. It's also about the Koch brothers and their buck fighting. See, no one steals votes to win elections. They steal votes to steal the money. David Koch ran for governor of Kansas as a Democrat. Okay? Don't forget, okay? It's not about party, okay? By the way, you can learn about what their role is in the Excel pipeline in this film, because you heard Kennedy, there's something you can do about it. And I'll tell you the first thing we're going to do about this. 9 ways to steal the vote. Actually, the lines are when you saw those lines I was walking on, the hours of lines, who was in those lines. Oh, the Pew Charitable Foundation, they said Florida only had an average 20 minutes of vote time. What's everyone complaining about? Oh, well, let's just look at, that's if you include the white weight. If I took a film in Ohio, I was waiting in line 5 hours for the black voters, so I decided, well, what does it look like in a white voting station? How long did I have to wait? I didn't have to wait. In fact, they came out with a cup of coffee. They said, come in. The black people were waiting in a cold garage. If you're a white voter, they had more poll workers and stations than they had voters. Okay, now, and that's what I want to talk to you about. And I saw it was a great image for the organization here to have, it was a black hand, a white hand together. Can I see the black hands here? Well, okay, we've got a problem. Okay, it's not a South African cricket match of 1950, guys. Okay. And then I go over to Souls to the Polls, and when I arrive, we now have a white person. Okay, I have nothing against white people. Both my parents are white. Okay, now, okay, but here's the thing. Okay, I go to the churches. I go to Reverend Jackson. How can we recreate the alliance? I said, you know, the black-white alliance. I said, well, Jesse, how about inviting some people for dinner? You'd have to give up the vegan thing for a night. But okay, we have to break some silos here. There's a lot of concentration here on things that do threaten white voters, like computer voting. But you have to remember, if you're a black person, you don't get to vote anyway. You don't get to vote. Those computers were like, that would be like spending the night at the Ritz. When those black voters came in, they saw those computer machines, and they weren't allowed to touch them. They got absentee ballot requests. Then when they weren't allowed that, they were given something called provisional ballots. Provisional ballots. We had, in the last election cycle where they kept the record, let's see, I just want to look at this number myself here. Oh, yeah, we had, 767,023 provisional ballots, 750,000 provisional ballots that were thrown away. People voted, and their ballots were rejected. What, they're criminals illegally voting? Go arrest them. No, because I went to one Indian reservation, okay, with David Iglesias, who was an attorney, the U.S. attorney, who was, by the way, he was told to look for vote fraud, and he found it. He found that the elections officials are taking away the votes of Hispanic and Indian people. So Karl Rove said, oh my God, he found illegal voters, so they fired him. What they said is you're supposed to go find not the people stealing the votes, you're supposed to find the victims and arrest them. And he said to me, he said, they literally wanted me to arrest George Bush and Karl Rove. Karl Rove wanted him to arrest innocent voters. He says, I can't find them. I've looked all over the Masons, give me these stupid caging lists. There's no illegal voters here. And they said, arrest some anyway. I kid you not. He said, this is the United States, not the Soviet Union. They said, oh, well, we'll let them go later. He says, you're going to arrest people for crimes you know they didn't commit? And he wouldn't do that. They fired him. Okay, and they replaced one of the U.S. prosecutors with a guy named Tim Griffin, who was the guy who made up the caging list for Karl Rove. And where is he now? I exposed him, and he was in tears crying, that British reporter, oh, I lost my job. He's in the United States Congress today as the chief sponsor of the bill for the XL Keystone Pipeline. And he got there by one way. Who in the world would take a totally discredited politician, Karl Rove's assistant, caught red-handed in corruption and vote theft? How could he get into office as a four-letter word, K-O-C-H? They gave him $167,000. Okay? For $167,000, a congressman will wash your car with their tongue. Okay? So that's how Tim Griffin got there, and the first thing they said is, where's our pipe? Oh, and by the way, the first extension of the Keystone Pipeline was built and immediately cracked and destroyed an entire part of Tim Griffin's district. And he was just in the paper last week saying, they're not doing anything about this pipeline that cracked in my district. He's still on the payroll as their guy.
What's his district? Where is it?
Okay, in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, that's how it works. It is not about stealing votes. It's about stealing the treasury. It's about stealing your government. It's not partisan. Okay? When David Iglesias and I went out to the Indian reservation, the Indians all lost their votes because they said, oh, you're not citizens. They were Americans before there was America. They were not citizens, so they gave them provisional ballots. It's okay, provisional ballots, but the provisional ballots, and they threw them all out because they didn't use the right envelopes because the officials gave them the wrong envelopes. And Iglesias busted this game. It was Democrats who did that to the Indians, who were Democrats, all of them. You can't shoot an arrow on an Indian reservation without hitting a Democrat. I mean, that's how it is. But why? The answer is because there's a uranium mine that the Native Americans are trying to eliminate because it was poisoning their fields. They're killing their kids. And they said, we don't want this, we're going to vote against this. Suddenly the Democratic Party couldn't handle, they didn't want no Indians in their party.
We're going to have to ask you guys to start wrapping it up. We're going to get the building closed by 6 o'clock, so you got about 10 minutes.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. That's a good point. So we got to wrap it up. We're going to break the silos. One way we're going to do it, Bob talked about, we need something, smart, humorous, here's what we're going to do. That film, Billionaires and Ballot Bands, this is produced by you. It's an experiment in citizen journalism, doing with Bobby Kennedy and others. Look, what we're going to do is you go to www.gregpalast.com, www.gregpalast.com. Okay? And there, individually, but especially if you have organizations, sign on. You'll see at the back of the book a whole bunch of progressive organizations that are signing on. I want your information. I want your organization to be part of this. You be the producers. Yes, the NSA for our list. But we need you. Okay? This is going to be, instead of moguls out of Hollywood, it's going to be you and me, and we're going to put this film out. It'll break the silos. It will have the prestidigitizing, the presto changeo, magical voting machines, but we'll also have the purges. We'll also have the spoilage of the black votes. We'll have the hung chads, you name it. It's all the ways that they steal and who steals it. It won't just be how they steal, but who it is. And I have actually, believe it or not, I had a long discussion many, many years ago. I certainly forgot about it. One of the Koch brothers is really upset with his other brothers. It's a hell of a family. And I had a long conversation where he laid it all out, and I have it on tape. I've never put it out before. So we're going to do that now. But I need you. And by the way, if you want my foundation, this was not by my pig publisher, Penguin. My very nice big publisher. But this is put out by my not-for-profit foundation. You can get a copy of the book of one of my previous DVDs over there. There's a stack of them. And I want you to go to gregpalast.com. Make sure that you participate. You want to get the book, go ahead. Let's talk about these ideas. Bust the silos. And thank you. Bless you. This is the beginning. This is the end of the meeting. It's the beginning of the movement. Thank you. Yeah.